Let's talk about The Lost Story by Meg Shaffer. It was our Read With Me book over the last 3 weeks and we read it in 3 parts. Be aware that this video contains spoilers for this whole book. So I really liked the first part of the book and I was totally invested in the storyline. We start with the fact that 2 boys, Jeremy and Ray, was lost in the Red Crow forest for a few months when they were 15. Nobody could find them and they were mentioned dead then because nobody could find them. And month after they got lost, they appeared. Rafe can't remember anything what happened in this time, and Jeremy told everyone that they got lost in the woods. And now many years later, I think 15 years later, we start the story with the POV of Emily. Emily was adopted as a baby and had a really lovely mom, but her mom died now. And the only family she has is now her blood-related sister. And she learned now that her sister was kidnapped 15 years ago and was lost in the Red Crow forest. Jeremy made it now his job to find kids and women that are lost. He is very good at it, and so Emily goes to Jeremy and asks him for help to find her sister. And we learn that Jeremy and Rafe met Shannon, so Emily's sister, back then 50 years ago in the Red Crow forest, and that she is probably alive now. And that was the start of this journey. I knew that this should have some type of Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan vibe. And I was really intrigued by that and couldn't wait for the moment they go all together in the Red Crow forest, which they do in the second third. So we have now a group of Emily, Jeremy and Rafe. Jeremy and Rafe haven't talked to each other in 15 years and are now reuniting and renewing this friendship. And we learn from Jeremy's perspective that this was more than friendship 15 years ago, but Rafe can't remember that they were in a relationship back then, and he didn't want to pressure Rafe into anything, so they haven't talked about this in all these years. And when they go into the Red Crow forest and to the point where the boys got lost and where they have seen Shannon, they enter another world, a fantasy world created by someone really magical with unicorns and good against evil fight and all these things. And Shannon, Emily's lost sister, is the queen of this kingdom or this world. And I think the whole premise was really interesting and intriguing, but the writing was not that much what I liked because it was super passive and things were just explained and told to the characters instead of showing them. That was a little bit disappointing for me. We have this the whole time we are in this magical world, that the characters are very passive, other persons say to them, go there and get information there, and they can't discover anything on their own and get information on their own because everything comes to them, and that was disappointing for me and reduced my joy of the story. In the end, this book that started with Emily's POV mostly and her search for her lost sister gets more and more the story of Jeremy and Rafe. And yes, I really enjoyed the story of Jeremy and Rafe, the whole romance part and the part that Rafe need to get his memories back, which he can now in the fantasy world. So they can get back together and they need to decide if they want to stay in the fantasy world or get back into reality. As I said, I really enjoyed this part, but it was weird that this whole story overpowered then Emily's story, which this was at the start of the book. We also have a fairy tale narrator in this book that comes up from time to time and speed things up a little or explain things a little bit more. I don't think that was necessary. It was just something to give this a more fairy tale vibe, I think. And the whole story in the magical world was very predictable for me. I discussed this book with a friend of mine that read the first 60% or so before I started, and I think after the first 50% we already knew how this book will end and how the plot will go throughout the story, and who is the villain king that went to talk to Rafe, how this whole world was created and by whom. We all could say it at this point, so there were no plot twists really. And for me, in the end, it is only a 3-star book. I really loved The Wishing Game. It was a 5-star read for me. Sadly, this is not, but I really loved the last 30 pages of this book. That's were the time where I got really emotional at this point that Jeremy got shot in the fantasy world and they had to decide to bring him back to reality, and with that they can't go back into the fantasy world. That's where the point where the emotions finally came through to me and I really felt the story in the last 30 pages. But before that I lacked all these emotions and I can't give it more than 3 stars at this point, which is really sad because I wanted to love this book as much as The Wishing Game. But for me, this felt more like it was her first book and The Wishing Game was the second. I don't know if she has written this story before The Wishing Game, but it felt like it. So as I said, it was too passive for me in the storytelling and it lacked emotions for me, except in the end. But I will definitely read more of Meg Shaffer when she publishes more. So we have just a quick let's talk about this week because I haven't marked anything. But I can say I really appreciated the pop culture references, like the time where Emily tried the first time to handle bow and arrow and she thinks that it looked so easy for Katniss Everdeen. That's what I really loved. And with that we are coming now to an end, and I can say, now that we have finished this book, we will read now White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky in December. So I can't wait to read that and hope you will join me. Please tell me in the comments, how did you like the Lost Story? Like the video if you wanna follow my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye!